Hi, my name is Sharon Birch. I'm the managing director of the Jazz Education Network, and I am proud to call part of our family the four people that are our guests today, and they collectively make up the New York Voices, as well as multiple other things that they do. So we reached out to, I don't remember how it began, but we had a few conversations about wouldn't it be great to have an online event sharing kind of behind the scenes and how they do it all and how they've done it all for so long, so very long. So without any other, well, I guess I should announce your name. That would be great. So they are made up of Kim Nazarian, Peter Eldridge, Darmon Meader, and Lauren Kinhan. And most likely you already knew that, but just in case, those are our big four personalities who are going to share how they make it all work, and they still love to connect with each other after all these years, and they still connect and have lovely lives with friends and family and figured out how to make it all happen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darmon.
Great to be with all of you. Unfortunately, we can't see you. We assume you're out there. And thanks for joining us for this little conversation. I think Kim sort of threw out the idea of us having a discussion about the balance. How do you balance the freelance life that we all live with trying to focus on a band like New York Voices and family and everything else that comes to mind. And I think that to start, I would like to say that this is really just a story that you've heard in many different ways, but it's just our version of what almost every freelance artist has to navigate, especially in this modern time when, performing, as much as we'd all love it to be the entire package of what we do, for so many of us, it's about combining that with many other things to be able to share our talents in various ways, and also economically to be able to make it all hold together. New York Voices, we oftentimes describe it as a full-time commitment, but sort of a half-time job in a way, and then we all fill in the gaps in various ways. And that experience for us has not been linear at all, and it certainly didn't start out with any clear sense. This is something that has evolved over time. If you were to talk to us back in 1989 when our first record came out, we would not have remotely been able to tell you, this is what we envision us doing, many years later, in terms of how this all balances out and the kind of educational things that we've become a part of. We actually also want to really acknowledge that organizations like Jen and IAJE before them, and all the ancillary organizations in all states around the country, and workshops and overseas, all these kind of things, we never would have envisioned that as being a part of what we do. But we were so thrilled to see, as we got further and further into our career, that was going to be a huge part of what we were going to be able to share and be a part of. And in retrospect, it makes sense, because we all can, to varying degrees, we all can look back to when we were in high school and we were being part of an all-state thing or all-county this or that, and what fond memories we have of those kind of experiences. So it's been very cool that we've been able to turn that around and share this with so many people, both on stage performing and also as educators, and then manage to fit the rest of our lives in and around all that. So with that said, I guess I'm going to hand it over to Peter to talk a little bit about what his experiences are these days.
Thank you, Darmon. What are my experiences these days? I think as we jump into this time together, hi everybody. I hope there's people out there. I'm here. I'm getting this weird sense of read it. Like that it's a ghost town. But hopefully, some folks are joining us. I am kind of my topic is combining. Thanks. It's combining a career on the and often either part-time, full-time teaching. I think we all four of us do a lot of teaching when we're not on the road together and when we're doing our stuff. And I am the only one that has a full-time teaching gig at Berkeley in Boston, and I have to always say how one complements the other. I think one informs and inspires the other, and I feel like being a teacher has made me stronger within the realm of the group, within the realm of all the other things I do, and how important that is. I used to just get so offended by the expression, those who can't do and those who can do and those who can't teach. That expression just makes absolutely nuts, because I think that thankfully has really evolved, and I think most people, especially in jazz and really anything, have taken on an element of teaching to pass information on and to make you stronger as an artist too. It is really hard to do both. I think it is. I do struggle with it. I'm not going to lie. There are times I'm just like, wow, this is a lot to grab onto, both from being a full-time professor. There's a lot of administrative stuff too, which is very time-consuming, and but at the same time, I just enjoy both so much. And I remember when I first joined the faculty at Berkeley, one of the people who teaches there, she kind of came up to me and said, "Wow, has it hit you yet?" And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, you can't do both." And I'm just like, "Oh, really?" And I got a little like, about that statement. I was just like, "Well, yes, you're probably right, but I can't imagine letting go of the more artistic endeavors. The more I still love being on the road even after all these years. Still enjoy going to new places, meeting new people, experiencing new food, languages. The whole thing is still compelling and inspiring. And so I just find myself always, and the voices will probably laugh when I say this, but I'm a big to-do list guy, and I just prioritize. Here's what I have to do today, and here's what I have to do in the next 2 days, and here's what I can maybe wait till next week, and here's what and I'm always revising my lists. I just always am kind of going, okay, the idea of crossing things out and starting again is something organizationally that I require, and I need to get it out of my brain and see it in front of me to visualize what I need to do and what's happening. So, but all four of us absolutely do a lot of teaching, and it's always been a big lifeblood of this band. Whether it's master classes that we do at colleges and high schools, or it's individual one-on-ones, it's our camp. It's all these things tend to all play a part, and and like Darmon said, it has also been a part of what has kept us alive through our decades together. I loved when Sharon said they've been together so long, and I think that is part of what keeps things interesting is getting to work with other people and passing the information on to others. So that would be the main thing. I will say, a lot of people say, oh, well, you just have to find a balance between life and family and art and this and that. And I respectfully say, I think that is absolutely impossible. I think you do your best, and you focus on the thing that is the most critical at the time. And sometimes that means something else will fall by the wayside for a couple of days, and you just try not to disappoint too many people in one fell swoop, and you just make it up to them later. You just do your best, but I will always say that art and education and musicianship and passing information on is a lovely way to live, and it does feel it feels important, and especially for jazz, because jazz can get a bum rap for being too lofty, which is not true. But jazz, the definition of jazz is always being reconsidered as well, and so you're just part of this history, and you want to keep the ball rolling, and you want to inspire others, and there's nothing better than that. There's also nothing better than finding somebody find what's special about them, and that's what teaching does. You try to help the person find what is unique about them, what they can bring to the world that is different from anybody else, whether it's in their sound, in their phrasing, in the style they do, if it's compositionally. So these are all things that you really do try to bring out in someone, besides sing technically better, don't push your voice. All the obvious stuff. You're just always trying to let them zero in on what is so important and integral about them that will be good for the world to hear. So that's kind of my 2 cents for the moment. I'm moving on to John.
Peter, did you want to answer a few questions? Were there any questions that were sent to you that might be relevant to this subject matter too, or do you want to wait to do that later?
I was going to wait till later, I think, but but thanks. Yeah, I think I'll pass the baton on to the next person. Is it Darmon? Is it back to Darmon? Yeah. So Darmon, back to you, dude.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so much of this is an overlap in terms of the various things that we're all going to say, but you're going to hear some common themes. I totally agree with Peter in that the idea of like finding the perfect balance is, that's the key. And everybody's like, duh. Well, that's why we're having this conversation. How do you find the perfect balance? You kind of don't. It's just it's moving. You have, I find, so I do not, my wife and I do not have any children. So in some ways compared to the rest of the group, I have a slightly simpler scenario, but even with my trying to balance, New York Voices business, which I'm the musical director, and I'm kind of the point person for certain amount of business side of things. And so there's a certain amount of things that happen off the road that are on my plate, a little slightly different than for the other three. And I'm as the primary arranger, I'm always kind of trying to, sometimes based on deadlines, which is actually, I will say, deadlines are one of the greatest means of inspiration. I can sit around when I have no deadlines, I swear, I'm writing something and it's like, I don't know, is this any good? I don't know. I think I'm going to go for a bike ride. I don't know. What am I going to do now? I don't know. Let me revisit this tomorrow. Then all of a sudden the deadline comes in and it's like, okay, I like this or I don't, and I'm going to change it. And here we go. And you get cranking. I find, deadlines are really wonderful. Whether it's for New York Voices or if I'm working on, I sometimes like to tell publishers, give me something, give me a chart you want me to do, and give me a deadline, and I will get it done for you. If you don't, I will just kind of stumble around for a while, and you guys need, just tell me what you need and what you want, and then I will actually get some work done. Organization, as Peter was talking about, in his case, it's stickies. Well, now actually, you've migrated to the digital stickies on the front of your computers on your desktop, right? But yeah, Peter used to just have like ridiculous amounts of the stickies on everything. And then, finding organization, having a list of order of things you need to get done, and prioritizing is very key. For me, the other wacky balance, of course, is trying to find enough time to still play my saxophone, so I remember how that works. I actually think it wasn't planned this way. It's sort of, I feel lucky that I chose saxophone as my instrument as opposed to trumpet or trombone or a brass instrument specifically, because there is, and you can get away with not playing the saxophone for a number of days, and you can pick it up again and not feel like, oh my God, I am in serious trouble because I haven't been doing my daily, warm-ups and my exact, my mouthpiece routines and lip buzzes and all that kind of craziness. So I would love to tell you that I practice every day. But you find then there are the times where I go, okay, I'm in the zone now. I got to get some serious practicing done, either because, again, it's a deadline. Somebody's hired me to be a part of a recording coming up in 10 days. Okay, I'm going to really get in there and get that together. Or New York Voices is going to be recording or whatever. I also find sometimes when I feel most comfortable in my horn is when we go out, those luxurious times when we go out and do like 10 gigs over 2 weeks. And guess what? I get to play every night and play at sound check and do all those kind of things. It makes an amazing difference. So I always appreciate those times on the road. The vocal warm-ups I try to do a little bit every day. But again, I actually look at my life as being a little bit like, any of you that are doublers, like woodwind guys and gals that are trying to keep clarinet, flute, and alto sax, soprano sax, whatever, bass clarinet. You're trying to keep all those things going because you're doing pit orchestra work or whatever. I've always had such admiration for those types of people that find ways of allocating a certain amount of time each day to and then prioritizing. Okay, this is a flute week, this is an oboe week, or whatever. In some ways, that's kind of what my life feels like, and it jumps around a lot. I'll even notice that I'll be like in a super zone for a period of time with Pro Tools. because we're recording and I'm editing and I'm like so in a zone. And then I don't open Pro Tools for 4 months. And then I open up and go, duh, how does this work again? And you get back in there and you start figuring it out. But it just takes a lot of, takes a lot of focus, organization, and then deadlines. I have to say, I always go back to that. That's a big piece of the equation for me and for all of us, I think. Who am I throwing this over to before we get into questions? Lauren, I think.
Thank you so much, Darmon. We appreciate that. Deadlines are, yes, they are the lifeline. I am talking a little bit about balancing all of our outside endeavors and staying on the New York Voices train. And, I think we learned early on that we were once 5 singers, of course, and but when we changed to 4, we were always really trying to pay attention to what would satisfy the individuals as well as the collective. And because it's this music that we make together doesn't necessarily always represent every single creative expression that we all care about individually. And so as we started to sort of march along in our career, little projects started to sort of come up as possibilities, either a solo record project, either for, we all had dreams of solo projects, or Kim was doing musical theater. Everybody has aspirations. And so we started to see little cracks in the mortar that showed us that we actually needed to honor that, right? And initially, it really felt terrifying to think, well, but if Lauren does that record, or Kim does that show, or Peter does that record, or Darmon does that project, is that going to suddenly mean that New York Voices goes away or disbands? And as we started to realize that actually it was beneficial for the group, it was beneficial that the individual members should go out and keep exploring their artistic creativity and grow outside of the ensemble. And that's okay to do that, right? It's not a betrayal. It's we're kind of a funny marriage, but it's not really like you're having an affair. It's really that you are out there, going and exploring your own creative values, and it brought back a healthier, happier person to the ensemble. And as we started to realize that that was not a threatening action, but actually something that we all really benefited from, we started to kind of breathe with that, and more of those things did happen. And I've often felt it was really remarkable that many of those things that we went out to do soloistically, there would be one thing about that solo project that came and cross-pollinated the group. So in other words, again, it did not take away from the group, but the group benefited from it. And so we started to learn that, and those were big growing pains for the younger version of New York Voices that thought of ourselves as this is our identity and this is what we're doing, right? To a group that really became much more empathetic and supportive of all the individual members. And so that was a learned skill. We learned how to speak to each other and communicate kindly. That went beyond, I'd like you to sing that note in tune, or I'd like you to sing a different vowel here, or I would like you to change this or that. We found ways to speak to one another musically inside the group, but we also found ways to support each other. So anyway, the solo projects have been something that I think is a big part of our story as well. And to this day, we are all now full-fledged solo artists as well in our own right, I think, which again is just a nice thing, that you didn't necessarily have to change your vision of yourself, but that it would continue to grow and be supported. So, as most of you know, Peter has a pile of solo projects and of all of his original music, and a project with Kenny Werner. Darmon has a solo project out and another one in the works with possibly more big band elements to it, and has been, of course, a very vibrant arranger out there, out in the publishing world. Kim has her own solo project, as well as she works with other bands, El Echo, and just lots of other things. And I have my own solo project, and other project with Moss, and a project, and so we all do lots of different things. And the other thing that I like doing is curating concerts. So I really enjoy supporting our singer community, and creating a really healthy platform for all of us to gather and celebrate each other's gifts in a really healthy way and supportive way, and that's been a lot of fun. And then the other thing that I do, and all of us do in New York Voices, is we all have little interior jobs in the band. There's always chief bottle washer, Peter Eldridge, Darmon Meader, laundry. So, we all do things. I take care of updating our website, and I do the email flyers and try to, update our Facebook and such. We finally just hired someone to do some of our social media, Nina Ruckbacher. Kim's chiming in, but
yeah, Nina Ruckbacher.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So she's handling our social media, which is great, right? We're learning. But I think Peter does a lot of things like just, the set list and does other arranging. Kim does the set list. Kim takes care of the camp. Darmon takes care of musical direction and all the things he listed already. So we all have our jobs that we put our sweat equity into the band, and try to have that be as equal as possible, right? And also something that celebrates something that person maybe does well, or is willing to do, or is willing to learn. And so all those things have shored up a way for us to keep this band working and growing and healthy, so that today we can continue to reinvent and adapt ourselves to, the pandemic, and the fact that now, we can't rehearse together and we're going to still record. So new ways to think about how we function as a band. So anyway, that's my spiel about talking about how we all have our own jobs, how we celebrate the individual, and we also really embrace and take care of our collective little family. So leaving time for questions at the end, I pass the baton on to Ms. Nazarian to close out the show.
I'm going to jump in there before you jump in, Kim and Lauren. There was a great question that came in. This is Sharon, for those who just joined on, from Jason in the feed, and going deeper into what you just brought up. I would like to hear how each of your significant others and developing those outside New York Voices relationships have defined you, since you seem to have found the secret of happiness.
Jason Coronacos? Wait a minute. Jason Coronacos? Oh my gosh. Yeah. From Ithaca. Holy moly. That's only 3,000 years ago. Awesome. Hi, Jason. Go ahead. Somebody else talk.
It might be a great segue for Kim, because she's certainly going to talk about personal and family, so she could get the ball rolling. And so I'll continue to pass the baton. Go, Kim.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for all of your interest. And I concur with my colleagues. What a comforting thing that is, to trust the people that you work with. They are speaking for us, and they speak the truth for us and for me. And I am honored and blessed to share my career with these three other people, of such quality and such substance as people and artists and teachers. So my thanks to New York Voices as well. And, that's also one of the reasons that we have lasted for 32 years, because we care. about each other. We care about the music. We care about jazz. We care about our students. We care about our colleagues. And it's all, you talk about that secret ingredient of happiness. But what we do, I think, is steeped in what we love. We're passionate about our job and the people that we share it with. And I think every day we kind of ask ourselves, are we doing what we want to be doing with the people we want to be doing it with? And the answer's been yes. So we continue on. And the universe has also graced us. There have been times when perhaps the road was a little rough. And then some major project would come in, or some producer would come in, or something would come in that would say, oh my gosh, we're not done, right? And we're still not done. New York Voices is still dreaming, even through this pandemic. We still have things on our wish list. So hopefully we'll get to all of them. But getting to the point at hand, my topic was, normalcy and relationships in this music career, in this industry, and parenting. We have done it. Hell or high water, we have done it, and we've done it together. What's normal? How can you define normal? Normal is what apparently makes you feel comfortable. And it's kind of what you gravitate to. And hopefully you can combine your passion with your comfort levels in your life to manage with those around you, right? So my normal is not the normal of a 9-to-5 or the normal of a farmer or the normal of a policeman or the normal of a doctor or the normal of a lawyer, whatever. But my normal works for me, and it works for my family. How do we do it? Our relationships, my relationships and my supportive network started with my own family. And my parents were very supportive of the arts and encouraged me to move down this path, and very proud of what we've achieved. And achieved more than I ever thought, I ever dreamed. I mean, I thought I was going to be on Broadway, and I'm working, in teaching music. I was an acting major in Ithaca, and here I am teaching music back at the institution where I learned acting. So it's kind of crazy, these circles of life. But my foundation of support started with my family. Then as I was in my late 30s, and my body was telling me, if you want to have a family, you kind of need to get it together. And I married my best friend, and I'm lucky enough to have found a partner that understands what I do. He did it as well, supports what I do, and supports the four of us. Jay Ashby has been involved in the career of the New York Voices. And everything kind of happened quickly for me. I put my career first for the first 38 years of my life and kind of established myself till I kind of couldn't do that anymore if I wanted to make my personal dreams come true. So shifting gears, everything happened within a year for me. Got married, bought a house, had a baby. Wow. And I was ready. I was ready for that. And I was with the right person to do that. A father that was, my husband being the father, very supportive and ready for those moves as well. Within our collective, my son has aunts and uncles in the New York Voices. Peter Eldridge happens to be my son's godfather, the person that my son chose for his godfather. So these relationships, they run deep and they are supported. And Lauren has a daughter as well that Ian and Ella grew up on the road together, and they are close friends, and they are pursuing lives in music, right? So there again, there's their normal. That's what they grew up with, listening to the Count Basie Orchestra, right? Being on the road with the Dizzy Gillespie Alumni All-Star Big Band, sharing holidays, with these major people in the jazz industry. That's kind of their normal. And we have fed these souls with this amazing music and this amazing environment. And it's kind of what they crave. It's what our children crave. We are all married. Lauren, I think, was the first one to get married. And then maybe Darmon, then me, and then Peter. And we have all been with our partners for the whole time and raised our families. And Peter is now a new foster parent. And I'm sure he can share some of those new experiences with you. But our children have adapted to our lifestyle. Lauren and I were very, very lucky to have kids that kind of wanted to be on the road with us. They wanted to be at sound check. They wanted to be backstage. They want to go to the parties. They want to, absorb the music. And they also were very cool with babysitters, whether or not we brought them on the road. The first 7 months of my son's life, I brought my cousin with me because I really wanted to nurse him. And my husband was cool with me taking him and, spending half my salary on my nanny. And that worked for us. And Lauren's daughter was on the road. And for the first 2 years when we started, our kids could fly for free. So that was a big advantage. Once they got into school, then we kind of had to work it out with our partners and with our families. I mean, my mom took care of my son for, 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes we limited our time on the road because it was just too much to be away. I learned that my buffer was about 8 days. I had a momentary low on the road when I missed my son's a significant birthday. And I was like, oh, okay, so we gotta talk. Something's gotta change for me. I can't be away that long and miss those big things. But yeah, so our kids were very, very adaptable and part of the equation, along with our partners and our extended family, parents, cousins, babysitters that, would fly into our homes and stay there for 10 days to take care of our kids and make sure that they got everything that they needed. The last thing we want to do is to sacrifice our kids' happiness for our own. So, always try to make sure, again, that was balanced and that they didn't miss anything significant. So I guess I've kind of touched on the hot spots of, normalcy, relationships, parenting that we're all, involved with. Yes, Darmon.
I just wanted to tag on to that. One of the other parts of it is flexibility.
Yeah.
That, like what Kim just mentioned, our first of all, our spouses all being very flexible and understanding what we've chosen. Yeah. All four of our spouses were either in the arts in some capacity or a large capacity or still are. And even those that aren't have an affinity for it and are just completely understand how we're wired and that we need that. But also even flexibility internally. If you, for example, like Kim mentioned, not wanting to be away from the family X amount of time or miss a big holiday. At the same time, there's been times when you're just like, wow, I really don't want to do that. But then you kind of go, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to do this, an incredible gig. And we're going to be on the road for Christmas. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, but think about this gig. This is really cool, or, whatever. And so you just kind of talk it through and work it out and try to make the balance work as best you can. Or sometimes we've had to say no to some things, especially as our teaching responsibilities have gotten bigger. When Peter took on a full-time position, that added another level of complexity to things, and we all adapted to that as to try to make that work. And Peter also does the best he can to try to hang in there with keeping those two balls in the air at the same time.
Right. But we also took our families on the road for those holidays. There were many times when all four of us had everybody around us, whether it was a New Year's Eve or a Christmas in a Japanese hotel. We all did it together, and it's fun.
We took our parents to on a cruise.
Yeah.
I will never forget that.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Ella and Ian, Lauren's daughter and Kim's son, they both had passports when they were only months old. So, that's been that way. And I remember they got kind of annoyed when school started, when they got to be like 4 or 5 years old, they had to go to school. Like, what? to go to school? Wait, you're going over to Europe. How come I'm not going?
Right. But we also have to say that sometimes those experiences on the road were more educational than what they would have gotten in a classroom or out of a book.
Yeah.
You know, these experiences have informed their lives, and it's the fabric of who they are, and I think and what they want to be, and their dreams as well.
Before we go over to a couple of questions here, I want to just go back to something Lauren was saying, that she just left out a key thing. She's doing all this curating of everything. The events that she's talking about, for those of you who aren't familiar, Vocal Mania is something that Lauren started with her good friend Janice Siegel in New York. And so once live performances is back, keep an eye out for that if you're in the New York area once a month, an evening of all these wonderful events. And now there's an online version called Vocal Gumbo that Lauren can tell you a little bit more about how to access that. But it's basically, right, in essence, the Vocal Gumbo has sort of taken the place as an online experience in a similar fashion, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to still create that community connection, and I think that we're all really craving as people that have suddenly found themselves not able to perform and to go out and exercise that muscle. I think many people are struggling with that and wanting to find that connection, both with their peers and also then with this, the Zoomosphere. Like I'm looking at this camera, and I have, I wish I could see all the faces that are looking back, right? So it's a very strange world we're adapting to, but that said, it's a way to keep the communication going and the creative juices flowing. So we're making it up, and we're pivoting like most artists do, right? We sort of adapt to our new circumstances, and artists. I was just hearing, actually, there's a really interesting symposium just before this that I was hearing. Berkeley was presenting. I think it's going to be available online, but a scientist was talking about how actually finding the vaccine and finding the cures is actually an artful dance. And a very artistic, scientists are actually behaving in a very artistic way, because everybody's sharing, everybody's reaching across platforms and languages and creative spheres to try and find this cure. And he described it as art. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. So, and a great reminder that how important the arts really are. And this way that we communicate with one another is an essential life force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Going back to, so Jason was asking about outside NYV relationships and how they defined us. We talked about significant others, and I mean, just first of all, just the support, of course, and then sometimes I laugh at some ideas that have come from some of our significant others, that said you should do this song or that, and sometimes they're like, nah. And then finally, I remember the one I always laugh about is Lauren's husband Rob was always saying, "You guys got to do Bohemian Rhapsody," and we're just like, I don't know, that just feels like that's and we finally did it because we had a situation that made sense, and now we do it all the time, and it it's an absolute blast. But and of course, Kim's husband Jay has actually been a producer for us and really musically involved in a lot of what we do. So that's been very amazing. But other relationships, I mean, things come to mind, specifically the opportunities that we've had to work with specific artists, that whether it was the Count Basie Orchestra or Ivan Lins or Paquito de Rivera, and these people become like almost extended parts of our family, and they influence us so much musically in terms of how it affected the way we approach stylistically the kind of music that they bring to the table, and the swing feel that we all got to live with on those days on the road with the Basie band, and then just listening to Paquito play and just getting into the subtleties of his band and all those things. And of course Ivan's music is just ridiculous.
I think,
and they also we consistently they've always been such nice people too, which is always kind of cool, when you find that it's not just the music, it's also the people that you get to spend time with. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think Lauren and I wrote "The World Keeps You Waiting" because we're like, let's write an Ivan Lins tune. I mean, it was just like we just gotten off the road with Ivan, and we're just like, okay, let's do our take on an Ivan Lins song. And so, yeah, so things just develop out of these relationships for sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's many tunes in our repertoire that grew out of very specific situations. I mean, I think of, for example, the On a Clear Day and Almost Like Being in Love. We were asked to be a part of a kind of a Cast of Thousands tribute to Alan J. Lerner. I don't know, might got in the mid 90s or something, a long time ago, and kind of put those charts together relatively quickly, and not knowing that, God, they would become standard repertoire for us for years and years to come. So those kind of things are cool when that happens as well.
I'm just noticing, I wanted to address this one question from the National Association for Music Education Council for Jazz Education. They're asking, if our students learning their discoveries, did they ever help or inform new material for the group? And the answer is yes. I mean, there are maybe some very specific examples with perhaps maybe Peter's arrangement of
I get along without you.
And
I get along with you very well.
And Darn That Dream.
And Darn That Dream, yeah. Both of those were
Yes, but at the same time, even in the nuances of the back of your mind, if you're paying attention to your mentors, your students, your colleagues right in front of you, I mean, everything's sort of, if you're paying attention, it's sort of going in, and you just really sometimes don't know when it's gonna come out in some format. But absolutely, our students not only inspire us, but encourage us to remain students ourselves, right? And remain open.
And another specific example for me was a student walked in with Love You Madly, and I'd never heard of that song before. And I was like, wow, this is a great tune. And I learned the song with my student. And then when we were looking for material for a New York Voices project, I'm like, I really like this song. Can we do something with this? And Darmon arranged Love You Madly for New York Voices. And it's still one of my favorite recordings.
There's also an interesting thing happened. I know, Peter, I've watched this happen with you many times, and I know this happens for me too, is I'll come up with an arrangement for a student way quicker than I would for myself, because there's sort of like a spontaneity, and you have like a specific, you've got 15 minutes with the student, and you're also not like over analyzing it, because it's like it's my personal statement or whatever. You're just kind of trying to and next thing you know, you're like, wow, that's I might have sat at home for 4 hours and it wouldn't have come up with that. That's cool. Yeah. And that maybe starts to turn into an arrangement for yourself or whatever. So it's kind of cool process.
Yeah, I sat on the I get along the chord changes and that reharm for years. I'd done it for a student, Matthew Brian Feld, and I think it sat in a pile of other stuff for 10 years before. I think I played it for you, Darmon. I was like, this is kind of cool. And you were just like, yeah. So, you just never know. Yeah, absolutely. Right. It also, that can apply to songwriting too. Writing for somebody else instead of yourself, takes the pressure off. It's just, it just lightens the load a lot. Yeah.
I also find sometimes after a day of teaching, I go out to Indiana University and teach out there on a part-time basis, and I might have one of those full days where I'm working with all the students, and then at the end of the day, like sometimes you're kind of exhausted and like, okay, I'm done. But sometimes I'm just sitting in the office kind of going, and I'm sitting at the piano, I'm coming up with some ideas. It's just like because the mind has been so active thinking about all kinds of layers of music all day, it just kind of opens some things up.
Yeah, for me, sometimes there's a need for a particular student that perhaps hasn't been addressed in either their classes or their other solo lessons. And then you have to write it or you have to create it. So when I teach my classes at Ithaca College, I kind of take a survey of what they need and what they want and what's kind of missing for them as vocal jazz majors. And I will write a new class. And for me, that's very exciting. It's challenging. It's scary. And hopefully it satisfies and fills that hole. And then those classes have then become workshops, whether they're at our camps or at other festivals. And that's been one thing, is just, students that have a need for something. And then you create it.
I'm looking at a couple other questions that came in here.
Sure.
Taylor Hatch is asking, when it comes to being educators, what are some ways you help your students find their own voices, and how do you teach that? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was just having a long conversation with an educator friend in Germany yesterday. We were talking about this. One of the dilemmas that we oftentimes struggle is the balance between wanting to teach the historic perspective of jazz, and especially a lot of times in vocal jazz, it's quite, I think, maybe more common than in the instrumental side, where you may have young students who have an interest in jazz, but they're actually more defined by their experience of listening to pop music as a young person, and they're trying to figure out how to get into the jazz side of things a little bit more. And so you're trying to find this balance of how much do you want to just inundate them with, like, okay, you need to listen to every Ella Fitzgerald solo, and listen to all of this Sarah Vaughan and Lady Day, and versus the music evolves, and a lot of what we consider the more contemporary jazz vocalists are actually, in a lot of ways you could say they're sort of a hybrid between what we used to call jazz and what we now call jazz. That's bringing in singer-songwriter aspects and this and that. And so the endless conversation about, like, do you need to learn all the historical? You have to have a huge, vast historical base before you're allowed to leave the nest and go do what it is you want to do, or do you just let them do what they want to do? And some of that is very subjective. Some of it also depends on the environment. If they are a college student who has signed up to be a jazz vocal major at Indiana University, they're going to have to check off a whole lot of boxes before they walk out the door with a degree. And some of those involve transcribing Coltrane solos, or learning form and analysis about how to and how to write a big band chart or whatever. So if they've signed up for that, you have to kind of dig into that world, and hopefully they find inspiration and they get excited about it. And part of what our job is to find the things that make them excited about it. We've all had students that when we met them as 18-year-old freshmen in college, you thought, I don't know if they really ultimately are going to really stay in this game, and some of them don't. Some of them realize, I don't really have the true passion for jazz, and I'm going to do something else, which is great. But then some will surprise the heck out of me. You think, man, I didn't think that one was going to last. And then, 4 years later, they're graduating and they're just been doing some amazing stuff. So part of it, I find, is just trying to remain an open mind with each student as they come in, and trying to find what it is that works for them, and what you can offer them that helps get them inspired.
Yeah. For me, when their voice, it might not just be their singing voice, but they might find their voice in arranging. They might find their voice in writing. They might find their voice sometimes in managing. Like they really get into that, or perhaps procuring, like Lauren's doing. My nephew started, the tiny dorm room series. He's finding his voice in that way. But technically, for me, in helping students find their voice, we want them to be influenced by all of this music that's around them, but not necessarily imitate everything that they hear. So there's that fine line between influence and imitation, and also building the entire voice. Sometimes when we get them and they're so young, it's just we get a part of the voice. We get the top and the front of the sound, but we don't have the back and the bottom of the sound, or you don't have the whole sound that's aligned from head voice to middle voice to legit chest on the bottom. So it's kind of building that whole thing. They come in with an element of clay, but you want to help them build that whole resource, right, for them to be able to use their voice and their sound on whatever it is they want to do musically. So that's kind of a part of my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's also good to shake people up a little bit and lead them into other genres, just as a means of keeping them from getting too comfortable in a very specific place, or artistically, musically. I think it's just sometimes just like, what about going over here for a second and let's just see how that will affect them in the long run. I think it's also I think it's good to have them try other styles of music, and maybe something in that will make them go, oh my gosh, this just opened up a whole other palette of colors I can play with, or it brings more. Again, it's always about bringing more information back to being a jazz singer and what that means. So I teach a Great American Songbook class, and anymore you a lot of times the students that come in don't necessarily know who George Gershwin was, do not necessarily know who Cole Porter was, and you can't go, oh my God, you don't know who Cole Porter is? You go, hey, that's really cool. Come on along and let's take this journey together, and then by that halfway through the semester, when you go, you know what, that's not about this right now. It's about what this lyric means and how this melody works with these chord changes, and and it's something that they've never experienced before. And by halfway to 2/3 of the way through the semester, you're like, there you go. That's that's you, baby. That's you. That's you as a person putting that song across and the lyric across. And it's usually like one person or two people in the class make me cry at the end of the semester because I'm like, you did it. It's just like you found yourself in this music. So it's very, 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 very exciting, I think. Yeah.
Everybody's offered really great things, so I'll only just say yay. And the journey of finding your artistic statement and your voice is a long one, and hopefully a curious one. So being perennially curious and open-minded, I think, will make a very colorful musician and singer and artist statement. Laura Karst wants to know how we've managed to practice and do our warm-ups. And when everyone's been at home and privacy is hard to come by, these circumstances will likely continue to exist some degree, even when we open up. So, yeah, we're all living in close quarters and on top of each other, and we've all suddenly become roommates in a really way as families, right? You're really like, okay, I'm reserving this room right now because I've got to do this and I need quiet, and someone else you have to go up there, and there's lots of compromise, and I personally feel incredibly empathetic for the people that are living in studio apartments or small quarters in urban centers, and it really is you really are living in one room or two rooms, and that takes that's a trying situation. So for sure, I think but that being said, I guess I'm warming up and practicing. I'm doing a lot of writing and arranging and recording right now. So I also feel very I've turned my home into a recording and production studio, like within a very short amount of time, and I'm sort of mad at myself for not having done it sooner. It's just like, God, like this is extraordinary that it took all this time for you to like make this space for yourself to be able to create and record and write. So I've been able to do that, and my family, we're all cooperating with making space for one another. But yeah, it definitely takes communication.
Yeah, and
I did the same thing. Go ahead, Darmon.
Go ahead, Peter. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm not as far as long. I'm certainly not as far along as Darmon and probably Kim in her household, but I'm about, I don't know, a month behind Lauren probably, and that I've set up a home studio for the first time too. And again, I'm just like, why didn't I do this? 15 years ago, but I didn't. And trying to catch up with life that way. So that has been the one. One of the positive aspects of a pandemic, and just having to be home is just, my space here is very different than it was a couple of months ago. So, things to be thankful for.
Yeah. Well, none of go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. Well, and my family, it's my husband, my son, and myself for now. Soon my dad will be living with us because that whole part of my life is changing. But we have always lived by, the professional code, and we are always, treating each other as artists and professionals, and what do you need to do, and when do you need to do it, and do you need the studio, and do you need the house to be quiet, or do you need this time to really practice, or I shouldn't be on the phone right now because you have to really focus. So it's all about those parameters and those professional courtesies that we provide for each other. But the other thing, that came to mind, if you're having issues with finding privacy, is perhaps maybe those people with you want to do it with you. Maybe they want to sing with you. Maybe you teach them a little something about practicing or music, and your practice becomes their practice, and it becomes more of a community thing as opposed to an isolated thing. So that was just a thought that came to me.
Yeah. One thing that New York Voices are, none of us actually live, well, Lauren kind of under normal circumstances would be still spending a lot of time in New York City proper, but she also has a place out on Long Island where she's been during this time, and the rest of us are all, Kim's in Ohio, I'm in upstate New York, Peter's up in New Hampshire. So we are the Eastern time zone voices, I guess. But because none of us are cramped in a really teeny space, but we all still have the dynamics. Even my wife and I, it's just the two of us. You'd think, oh, that's got to be easier in a nice, good sized house. But we could not have more opposite things that we're trying to do. She's trying to have online psychotherapy sessions, and I'm going to play saxophone in the next room. So needless to say, those do not go well together. So we actually write out a schedule. I have to, and I check. I go, okay, she's, and also I can always tell, and if her door is closed and the sound machine's on, then she's in session. Okay, so time to chill or get outside. And so, yeah, it's a lot of just trying to really pay attention, and then also what the interesting thing is you think, oh shoot, I've got these parameters still. I can't just practice whenever I want. But then you find yourself, hey, I got 45 minutes. Get the horn going and really concentrate for 45 minutes. And you know what? That's about all the concentration level I have. Anyway, after 45 minutes to start kind of like zoning out anyway. So just get in there and make the most of the time and be productive in short spurts. And oftentimes you find that to be just as if not more successful.
And sometimes my warm up is my teaching with my students. So when I'm singing with them and we're developing these things, then my voice is warmed up and ready to go for just hit the computer.
Yeah.
For the recording that I have to do.
Hey, really quickly, I noticed, there was a lot of great questions here. There was, for me, and maybe there was for the rest of you too, there were definitely some that were more about arranging and some of the more specific music side of things, which we didn't really have time to get into today. So I'm just throwing this out there. If there's ever a time that it makes sense, Jesse or Sharon or, I would be happy to be a part of a arranger conversation with some other people or some other arrangers you want to pull together, whatever, and maybe we could get into some of those things, which would be kind of fun.
There's a question for all of us. I don't know if you were going to mention this, Sharon, but it was just someone was, in terms of trying to bring us down to like center us and being in the moment of what we're living through right now. They say, thank you. We need each other, a sense of strong lobby for economic support and rescue. Although arts pull us through these difficult times, I sense that at some point, we, the artists, are the only ones who realize that. And how do we broaden the awareness that arts and culture are basic ingredients of everyday life and society? And I just would like to quickly say, how humbling this experience has been to not only live through the pandemic, but to live through these times of Black Lives Matter, and the fact that it's really found a moment for all of us to come together, especially in music education, and especially the people that are the caretakers of the jazz lineage and teaching it, that we're having some really important conversations, and it's a time to be really reflective and have your voice known, and the kids should be motivated, we should be motivated, and we should put our efforts into every possible way to elevate and raise up the people that need raising up.
And the history will be written as it always has in the music.
Yeah. Music, I don't, when we are able to perform live, it may start out, it may turn into a much more localized experience, which of course makes it a little challenging for a group like New York Voices, since we are geographically a bit challenged. But I'm doing a gig with a couple of friends, an outdoor gig in July, and it'll be like, oh yay, because we can do it outdoors, and like, okay, well that's a start, and it'll be baby steps, and then we'll just obviously have to play it by ear. The idea of making, going out and doing lots of gigs to make money, that might be a little bit more hard to see exactly when that feels like it's back to some sort of normal, but that does not kill the creative spirit or our own desire to get out there and sing and play and perform. And so, I'm sure whether it's a group like New York Voices or whatever your other favorite groups are, or yourself, we will all come back to that energy and put it back out there. And it's just in our nature. It's in our basic DNA. We're just we'll go out and do it.
Yeah, that creativity, it's a living organism. It's that amoeba that just keeps reshaping and reshifting. And I've truly been enjoying making music with my little family trio. And, investing in that is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I would
you don't have to pay them much.
I would like to encourage all the students and our colleagues to create and to find new ways to connect and make art and express yourself and express the language of the moment and reflect it, because it's you can do it, and you don't know what you'll discover by playing in that in ways that maybe aren't normal for you, and we'll find new ways to be an artistic community. So it's an opportunity for us to explore, and I encourage everybody to do that.
I think we have one nice, really great final question. I'll give you a little bit of time to percolate on this, but what has been the biggest piece of advice that has stuck with all of you throughout your individual careers, whether about teaching or about being a professional musician? So we circle back to, well, whoever has that top of mind, go for it.
Well, I mean, from our experience, both in terms of how we try to present ourselves, and also I think when I look at the various people that we have hired to be in our band, the pianists and bassists and drummers, and how many of them have become lifelong friends, and basically extensions of our own family. It's about being a good person as much as being a good musician, about being, showing that you care about each other, that when you show up the gig, you're not just there for the paycheck, that you're there to experience the music and also enjoy the dynamic of working together and being together, because look, there's a million people that can play well and sing well, but the ones that we find that we enjoy working with, including our partners in our own band, are the ones that we also feel like, what, I'd go hang out with them after the gig. That would be fun. And I don't mind hanging out with them at 6 o'clock in the morning for lobby call for a 9-hour travel day. I can deal with that.
Or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Or 4 in the morning.
So that's been such a key ingredient.
Lauren?
I think it's so silly, but it's like, it's the easiest thing to do, and really be as genuinely connected to your own idealisms and your own being as genuinely connected to the things that make you feel passionate in this world. That if you can bring that to your music, that is usually a thing that can be felt beyond, a speaker or a stage, but your own textures of your humanity. If they come into your music, that's the stuff that differentiates you from being either a really good singer or a really good musician or a really good anything, to like someone who actually you can feel the fibers of your music and your ideas. So I always say, just, I don't know, be you. It's and lean into that.
So I've had kind of 3 things that have surfaced for me. One from my improvisation teacher. Her name is Datavik Ovanesian. And she says, I'm always sitting on your shoulder and I'm always whispering in your ear that every note you sing has to come from your soul. So that you're always digging deeply and you're always sharing a part of yourself when you are singing. For myself, it's reminding myself to always be grateful for the good things, that my artistic cup is always half full and my music cup is always half full. We can always see what we don't have, but to remember to see what you do have and to be grateful for that. And then early on in my developing years, I had a friend who kind of helped me get over a hurdle. And I think when you're young, you kind of play the comparison game, and it's like, oh, but I can't do that, and I can't do that, and I'm not like that, and what's that, and all that kind of stuff. But to not see yourself through other people's eyes, but to truly see yourself for who you are. Those are my 3.
I am not going to add anything to that. So that's cool. I think everything's been, that was awesome. So I think,
yeah, come on, Peter.
I just wanted to say this this kind of goes with what we were talking about before. I'd like, when dealing with like what will happen after the pandemic is over, how will our lives change? I just hope that we're a little more like, with the Black Lives Matter movement and with Me movement and with everything is just shaken to its core, and it can't help but have us find a new way to meet each other and find sympathy with each other, and do better with each other, because I have made myself a pact that I have to get off freaking get caught up. It's like, that terrible expression, in a plane crash. I see what people are saying to each other on social media, and it just gets me so upset, and it gets me so sad. And I have to just have to go, okay, this is going to lead to something else. We're all going to do better soon, because we can't go anywhere but up right now. We just really need to kind of reinvent how we are with each other, and with these huge stirrings of people getting the respect they deserve. I just can't help but think that that's going to happen, whether it's 6 months from now, a year from now. But I do think life is going to be different, and in a good way. So I just hope, the end is really heavy. So I hope people find themselves in that and can be vulnerable again, and respect each other again. So anyway, sorry, I felt like saying that before, and I'm going to say it now. So there.
Good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's beautiful, and we have to stay vigilant, and we will get we'll get these important things to change, but we have to pay attention and stay vigilant.
Yep.
Before we close, I guess a little plug for our virtual camp, our first virtual camp. It's July 26th through August 1st, and you can go to the New York Voices website to register. We do have a coupon code for those of you that are Gen members and ACDA members, and you get a 10% discount off of whatever you decide to participate in. We wish you well. We really do. Stay healthy, stay safe. Join whatever creative, artistic community you can. Ask for help if you need it, right? Ask for help. It's okay. I'm going to ask for lots of help when it comes to the technological part of our camp. And as Peter said, be good to one another. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Sharon.
Yes,
thanks,
thank
Jesse.
you. Oh my gosh, you guys have been amazing, and I think the beautiful part for me is I've listened to your music for, I won't say, what was it, Darmon, that you repeated on me?
So long.
Never so long, whatever.
Oh, so long.
It was a very good thing. It was a very good thing, but this session to me, it really shows the heart and soul and the depth of who you are and what you do and why it permeates, why I was able to say so long or so whatever that is. You keep regenerating, you keep pivoting. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm proud to know that you're part of my Gen family, as well as the colleagues. And I want to invite anybody that is watching that is not part of the Jazz Education Network, that you're not part of Gen, that we invite you. We just open our arms to anybody that would love to be part of this family. It's a beautiful family with lots of hearts and souls, very similar to the New York Voices. So thank you for sharing your hearts, your talents. And we look forward to the next time we meet, which I think is going to be a Darmon Meader vocal arranging session, right?
Good job, Darmon.
Well, there's definitely that going on at camp as well. So.
All right, cool. Well, so long to everyone. Thank you again.
All right, our pleasure. Thank you.